So knowing
Yeah.
everything that you know now, I know that you're a EO advisor, you advise aspiring and young entrepreneurs. One thing I am curious about is in a time where everyone has 3 seconds of attention span and everyone wants to plug that 5 hour energy thing, 3 seconds, you can have energy for 5 hours. It seems like what we're doing here, and as well as tea, is going the opposite direction. We want people to slow down.
So when I first started seeing patients, when I finished the studying the Ayurvedic Institute, and even some of the patients that we would see and studying with Dr. Law, they would come and they're like, "I need more energy. I don't have enough energy. I need more energy." In fact, what people need is they need not the cotton on the fire that's going to give them those bursts and spikes, but they need something more sustaining. And I have no problems with caffeine, by the way. And in fact, if you take, and I go to the dark side, I drink coffee from time to time. I like a good cup of coffee. But let's just take a look at caffeine and energy for a second and how coffee compares to tea. If you take the bean, the coffee bean, and you brew it, the spike of caffeine goes up, and then you have this really long, deep crash. It takes a long time to come back to your normal state, very long time to come back to your normal state. So I actually think people are more addicted to the crash of coffee than they are the rush of coffee. And tea, you get this elevated state, but you come back down eventually to your normal state. So you don't actually dip below your normal state. You go up and then you come down.
Oh, interesting.
So
I did not know that.
so the polyphenols, the flavonoids, the catechins, all the good stuff for you combined within the tea leaf help combat those negative side effects of caffeine. And you just don't have that within coffee. So coffee, you get a deep crash. Tea gives you this, what they call tea mind, this elevated mental state where you're able to be hyper focused, mentally clear. If you need to be in your feet all day, you need to present something, you need to work on a project, tea gets you in that frame of mind. And this is also why I think why Google and Slack and some of these other really innovative thought leaders in the tech space, why we work with them is because tea really has the ability to work with techs and work with different creatives to be able to sit and get in that zone and really hyper focus on what they're doing. And they're alert. They're not feeling that. So I can drink a shit ton of coffee and feel jittery, but mentally foggy. With tea, I can just sip on tea all day and feel super present without that crash. So I taste hundreds of teas a month in terms of quality control and in terms of sourcing. So I sip a lot of tea, but in terms of enjoying a cup of tea, it's not a gulp. It's not a big gulp. It's not a slurp. It's typically it's a sip. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't have now over 85% of all the tea that's enjoyed in the US is actually iced tea. So there's a lot of gulping that's happening with iced tea, which is great. But I think just being really intentional about what we're putting in our body and the mindful acts, again, that right foot on the floor, how we eat, how we sip, how we're holding our cup, how we're pouring. There's a story of two samurai armies, a full army on one side and a full army on the other side. And there's a tent in between. And the two generals come out between the armies and they meet inside the tent. And inside the tent, there's a little tea setup. And one general pours tea for the other general, and the other general sips the tea. And they can tell without saying a word who has won and who's lost the battle. So they both leave the tent. One general says, "All right, guys, let's go home. We lost." And the other general goes and says, "All right, guys, let's go home. We won." So there's so much intention behind the subtleties of the ceremony of tea. And I just wonder, could we potentially be more intentional with the work that we put into this world, with the actions that we put into our daily lives, even if it might feel subtle, even if you might feel like it's not going to impact anyone else's life? What could it do, even in your own life, if we're more intentional with how we carry ourselves? It's the commitment to the daily ritual. It's the commitment to one, getting a better understanding of the quality of leaves.